Good afternoon. So I'm joined by two very, I would say, people who work in regulated industries, high profile, high stress, and jobs where, last minute sort of data observability, getting things right is so important. First of all, I'd like to introduce Ondrej. Ondrej, I would like to, if you could please tell us a little bit about yourself, what do you do, who you work for, and then we get started. I think he can hear us. Ondrej? All right, while we're waiting for that, Satish Kumar, why don't you start off?
Sure.
Tell us a little bit, and we'll get it sorted out. Yeah.
Sure. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon. Satish Balasubramanian. I'm a Vice President, Head of Architecture, Data and AI at a company called Deluxe. Again, for people who have been using Check, I met a few people here who said they are still using Check. You all should be aware of Deluxe. So Deluxe is another 10-year-old company. We are probably the last standing manufacturer of Check in US. Wow. But last 10 years, we also pivoted ourselves into more of a payments and data company. So we do everything around payment processing, accounts payable automation, accounts receivable automation. We are also one of the largest data-driven marketing company for the multiple FIs across US. That's about me.
Awesome, thank you. You got the audio problem sorted out there? Ondrej, can you hear us? Not yet, okay. So let's keep going. Sorry, Ondrej, we'll have to wait a little bit. He's dialing in from Czech Republic, so this is like a long distance connection, so we'll get it sorted out soon. So before, while we wait for him, why don't you guys tell us a little bit? I think one of the themes is observability is at the core of a lot of what people need to do from a data standpoint. What does it mean in your industry, right? Especially there is some regulations involved and such. So can you tell us a little bit about what it means from your standpoint and your industry standpoint?
Sure. So any company, especially in fintechs, banking, we don't trust something that we don't see. So you need to have a clear visibility into what's happening for the company to trust it, the regulators to trust it. So observability for me is something like that. It's the pulse that keeps a constant check on what's happening within the data ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about observability, I think we typically talk about, okay, data pipeline, how the data pipeline is, how is the data processing between the data pipeline. But for me, observability goes well beyond that because it's the end-to-end, starting all the way from sourcing to mainly around how the data is being consumed. What is the business impact? What is the SLA's impact because of data being available or not available? What are the KPIs that are driving the particular data? So the observability is the complete end-to-end from when it comes to data. So you need to have clear visibility into what's happening, what is happening, what's the impact if something is not happening. I think having a tab on all of those is observability for me.
Okay, awesome. Describe a little bit about your environment, right? When you talk about end-to-end, like what does it constitute? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Perfect. So we are, as I said, we are one of the largest marketing data lake holder within US. So we get data from like 100 plus vendors. So the data flows in. Mm-hmm. And these are regulated data, sensitive data, some data that comes from the regulated environment and things like that. So the data flows in all the way from our third parties, which we aggregate, we do mastering of the data, and then we store the data within our data lakehouse. And then the data in the data lakehouse is used for multiple companies' marketing campaigns. Mm-hmm. And it's also used for some of our internal processing, some of our internal marketing as well. Mm-hmm. So there are N number of customers who are waiting for this particular data. There are end customers, distributors who use the data. So when I talk about end-to-end, it's all the way from the vendor, the way they send the data, the way we process the data, the way we store the data, and then all the downstream that start using this data in creating extracts or creating campaigns which are very, very specific for some of these customers and the timeliness in which they could reach out to these customers. So that's the complete visibility that we need to have, because anywhere there is a breakage in this particular thing, like the vendor is not sending the data, or the vendor is sending the data which is not fresh, because that pretty much happens. Vendor thinks they sent a file, but the file might not be the correct file that they sent. It may not be having the entire data that is applicable for today. So if there is a breakage there, it's going to impact the campaigns that we run. It's going to impact some of the reporting that we do for our distributors. So there is going to be a downstream impact, which is like 10 levels down because of one small mistake that happened at the topmost. So that's the complete ecosystem that we are talking about here that needs to happen.
Very complex, obviously, right? I hear Ondrej is able to hear us now. Is that correct, Ondrej? Can you hear us? Awesome. Yay. If you could please introduce yourself. I've been waiting to hear from you, so please introduce yourself, and then we'll get started with some questions.
Yeah, and hello everyone, and big hello from the Czech Republic.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm Ondrej Kubera, director in Central Data and Analytics team at Merck, known as MSD outside North America, leading our observability and data access engineering chapter. I focus on building enterprise capabilities that ensure data is trusted, governed, and operational across a complex environment. So teams across lines of business can build data products and solutions on top of them to make faster and trusted decisions. And super excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, Ondrej. So I just asked a question earlier around data observability and why that is becoming core to a lot of enterprises, especially complex regulated industries like yours. Can you tell us a little bit about what it means for you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. So when I hear data observability at the core, and especially in a life sciences environment, which I come from, it starts with patient first. Yeah, everything we do in data and analytics is about, for us, is about shortening the drug development cycle, either developing medicine faster or getting them to more patients. And if data health is poor, it directly slows us down from that mission. So that is why we look at data as strategic asset and manage it as products. And we need to understand and manage data health across the portfolio consistently. So from that perspective, data observability for us is an enterprise standalone capability integrated across the entire DNA ecosystem. And by placing it at the center, at the core, the goal is simple: solve these problems once and reuse the foundations across domains instead of rebuilding the same data observability capabilities again and again.
Makes a lot of sense. So this next question I'm going to throw to you first. With AI, obviously, looking at the lineage, where the data is coming from, what's feeding the models, and analysis become really important. So when you look at pipelines and pipeline observability and lineage observability, can you tell us a little bit about how you use that to improve trust in your data and the importance of that in your environment?
Yeah. It's really a combination of multiple layers for me. Yeah, so of course there are some foundational elements, what I would call like hygiene signals, like fractions, volume changes, schema derivative anomalies, you name it. Those are necessary, but not sufficient. Yeah, what really matters most for us is understanding lineage across a complex ecosystem, across multiple platforms, where you might have several Airflow instances, pipeline spanning, multiple data hubs, and you need to know quickly what the root cause is. Who will be affected if something breaks, who is actually using the data, and where it is embedded. Reports, models, decision. And to make it operational, you really need to have all these signals at your fingertips, so you can act on it proactively before something happens, instead of having 15 support engineers for one data platform or 3 support teams calling each other trying to figure out what is going on. And by you, I don't mean just a human, but an agent as well, of course.
Awesome, awesome. Yep. Coming back to you, how does that play out in your industry? Can you give us maybe an example where if you had better lineage, something could have been prevented, right? If you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, lineage for me, I think, because we are talking so much about trust. It's one of the core component of establishing the trust with mainly the data consumers, whoever is using the data. I'll give you a classic example. Like I said, the check ordering is 50% of our business. So when the salespeople go, they go and track an opportunity with a bank, and they try to sell the check as a product to the bank. And then when they are onboarding, say the bank doesn't order, some other customer of the bank orders the check. So then depending on the check, the number of checks ordered, then you go and start billing for whatever check that has been ordered. And then you send the invoice, the payment happens. So there are like minimum 15 to 20 systems that are involved here. But when we look from our RevOps standpoint, when our revenue operation team goes and starts looking at this end to end, they need to look at the data that started all the way from an opportunity creation to the final where the payment happened. So there are multiple steps in between where the data flows through various systems. Traditionally, you go to each of these systems, extract the data, put them onto some Excel, try to create a report out of it. But now, I think with the data lakehouse that we created, the data flows in from all of these systems into a common data lakehouse. Now, that's when the lineage becomes really critical. So when I go and look at a particular, the final, say, billing, I need to have a visibility in which I could trace all the way back to which is the opportunity, which is the account, which is the order that this one got created, what is the order comprised about, because there are some special designing that you do in check. Each of those has a separate SKU. So you go and start tracking for all of those, and then finally it comes into your billing and the invoice that you generate. So having that traceability really matters, because when our RevOps team goes and start looking at it, the moment they don't feel like the data is right, like a bank ordered like 1,000 orders in a month, and 1,000 orders, there are so many SKUs. They are not able to go and trace back everything. They lose trust in the data. So you could build, technically you could do everything to build this data lakehouse, but the moment the consumers of the data are not able to really feel the data, they are not able to really get comfort with the data, the entire effort goes for a toss. So that's where the lineage becomes very critical. The overall, like the cataloging of the data, because each of these data in various systems means completely different. So having that common understanding, having a way for us to go and trace back, mainly for the business consumers to go and trace it back by themselves, is the critical part of the entire data that we are building.
Awesome. Ondrej, you talked about how developing drugs and bringing them to market is very important. Clearly, there are systems everywhere, right? There is data everywhere. Do you first subscribe to the fact that hybrid is sort of the reality? And then secondly, how does that kind of impact your observability strategy when you're looking at it from a hybrid environment?
Yeah, can you please repeat?
Yeah, so my question was, given that hybrid is likely a reality probably for your enterprise, like how do you think about observability in hybrid environments where you have data in the cloud, on-premise systems, lakehouses,
right,
things of that nature?
Yeah. I think that it's very, very important, and the risk that if we keep the observability to link it with the theme of this like data observability panel, I think the risk if we keep it to really like one cloud, one platform, is that it becomes simply useless in complex environments like ours, because we will have multiple data platforms, different data transformations and integration stacks, often spanning various compute environments. But you want to observe the whole ecosystem, not just one siloed piece. So the pipeline is only one part, and you need to extend to analytical assets, model reports, the full landscape. And if we don't do that, if observability is fragmented across platforms or clouds, that's where we lose context and we lose parts of the lineage across boundaries, lose time, we miss the complete picture, and the real risk is ending up with a false conclusion that everything is operating correctly. So from our perspective, we want to really enable the end-to-end observability across multiple compute environments as a central capability.
That's great. How about you, Satish? Like, is hybrid a reality in your environment?
It is. So we operate on hybrid cloud strategy. So we have a huge on-prem data center where most of our legacy applications run. We are also on AWS, which is our forward-looking environment where most of our growth products are built. And obviously, we have Azure with all the Microsoft products. Our ERP runs on Azure. So the reality is most of the companies are going to be in an environment like this. It's all going to be mixed infrastructure, hybrid kind of an ecosystem. I think we had this conversation earlier in the day. Earlier, I think we spent a lot of time, money, energy in creating this central data lakehouse. We are pulling data from all of these sources, trying to create a central ecosystem. That, meaning, is it really worth doing it anymore? Probably is questionable with so many things that is changing. So that's where I think the observability across all of these systems becomes really critical. You need to have same level of observability that you had on your central ecosystem across all the data sources, because the data could come from anywhere to meet one of your data product that you are building. Or it could be the data could come from one of your legacy system, which is going to be one of the small attribute in the report that you generate for the customer. So having that visibility, having the complete lineage of everything that happens, and mainly, I think having the quality, where the data could potentially go wrong, especially in the legacy environment, it becomes even more critical because the data could go wrong for multiple reasons. So hybrid is the reality, and having a product that goes across all of these hybrid ecosystem and creates an observability with a single pane of glass, I think is very, very critical.
Excellent. Would you take it further, right, beyond observability to more full-on management of the data when you're looking at it from a hybrid estate? What are your views on that? We've heard some stories earlier today. We saw some great demos. What kind of an impression it made on you, and what's your perspective?
See, like I said, especially for a business which is running for 110 years, we have some of the systems which have been built 40 years back. We literally don't have any SMEs. The last standing SMEs have either retired or they have moved out of the company. So many times, even understanding what those systems spit out data becomes very complex. So when we look at these, especially for us as part of our digital transformation, one of the main things that we said is it's going to be data-driven moving forward. So most of the decisions are made using data. We place data at one of the critical factor for our digital transformation as well. So the critical thing that we have started doing more and more is how do I know where the data is from a sourcing standpoint? Do I know the complete details about the data? Because some of the attributes are so cryptic. I always joke this. When you go to some of the ERPs have attribute name as a single letter in the alphabet or some different languages. So which becomes completely complex for us to even comprehend what this data is. So having visibility into data, the metadata completely, what are the possible enumerations of the data is critical. And then we spoke about lineage. You need to have the complete lineage. And then I think more and more, I think people are with all the tools, AI tools that are there, people are becoming more and more used to asking a question and getting an answer for a question. So can I just type a simple natural language and can it just go and query and give me the entire details about the data? Can it give me a blast radius of this particular attribute if I change? What are all the various things that it would potentially impact? Regulations, where is the PAI generated? Where is the PAI actually used? If I make a change to the PAI, what is going to happen? We are in California, so if a CCPA Act, someone comes and says, where is this particular customer data used? I need to have the visibility into that entire thing. So effectively, all to say, when we talk about data management, the data governance aspect of it, I think we are just expanding our footprint into multiple things around what I can see, what I can touch, what I can feel, and more towards what I can converse with the data. So that's where I see most of the data management going, whether it's one cloud environment or hybrid environment. I think we need to have the same level of maturity across all of these platforms.
Awesome. Ondrej, switching gears, right? With agentic AI, clearly agents are making decisions. In a regulated industry, where do you draw the line between recommendations that an agent makes and decisions or actions that the agent takes on your behalf? How do you see that?
Yeah, so, probably with no surprise, safety comes first, right? Especially in a regulated environment like ours. We have several governance processes in place to evaluate ethical, legal, and operational risk, including agentic system design reviews, and we use multiple criteria to determine the right level of agency. From what I've seen, agents already start to add a lot of value by diagnosing and advising broadly, but acting narrowly, and only when governance, auditability, and reversibility is designed upfront. I do think this line will move as we and industry mature, but safety will always come first. And the goal is not to necessarily reach the highest level of autonomy, I would say. It's to choose the lowest level of agents that at the same time safely solves the problem really at the scale we really need.
Mm-hmm. So safety first, right? As you mentioned earlier, that's like your baseline, and then you build on it. Cool. Awesome. How about you? Where do you see agents being used and sort of taking part in action versus recommendations?
Sure. I was hoping Ondrej doesn't say agent is used everywhere in the health system. My answer would have become very tough. Meaning in fintech, I think at least I see there is a lot more resistance even for a normal AI usage, because banks are becoming more and more particular. They want us to disclose where we use LLMs, what data goes to LLMs. So AI adoption by itself, I would say, is, there's a lot of AI adoption, but at a much more measured, slower way. So agents at this point in time, I think, is more far-fetched. Where we have at least started toying around with agents, at least in our company, is mainly around the read operations. Can it just, the things which used to happen manually, things where we had some human going and doing stuff. Like there are good examples that we have disclosed. Like sometimes we do a pricing comparison between what was there in our contracts to what actually we build the customers. Some of these places, human used to do it, or there's a lot of dump of data that you take into Excel and start doing some comparison. So we have started using agents to do some of these things. So things which are much more controlled, where we can know it's not going to impact any net output. That's where we have started using agents. We have not really started using agent in any of our mainstream yet. I think it's going to be more measured rollout once the legal and compliance gets comfortable with how the agents are behaving.
So at least what you're saying is that some limited way there is some autonomous operations, but you kind of make a decision, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say autonomy, more of a human in the loop. Agent does something, comes back with the data, it waits for a human to review it, give a go-ahead, and then it goes and does something.
So obviously a platform that has the opportunity for the human to be in the loop.
Correct.
And apply more autonomous action as you get more comfortable would be very important for you, I would think, right? So, okay, excellent. We've got about a minute and a half, so I'm going to ask a little bit of a future-oriented question. So if you were to think about 2-3 years from now, where do you think your business is going to be and your industry is going to be in terms of just using agentic AI in the enterprise? Satish, why don't you answer first, and then I'm going to give Ondrej the last word.
I think the aspirationally, there is a lot of things that we could use AI for, especially for our company, where we are trying to modernize, we are trying to transform the company into more of a digital company. There are a lot of legacy processes that we really want to rewrite. And it's not like we just want to stitch them or automate them. We want to reimagine many of these processes. So agentic workflows, agents doing transactions on behalf of the customer. Some of those are definitely a reality from an aspiration standpoint. In 3 years from now, probably things which are, again, low risk, where we are much more comfortable in agent making an autonomous decision, is what I see we will be definitely comfortable doing. But there is a lot of push all the way from board to the C-suite to everyone. I think there is more ask on how we are using AI agents, how is it going to bring in efficiency into our business, and also probably become one of the primary driver for the business. So there is going to be more work, but in a controlled, regulated, responsible, I would say, in an area where we know what the agents are actually doing.
Mm-hmm. So visibility and traceability for the agents are very important. Ondrej, your perspective in terms of next 3 years, right? How do you see this play out? And what would you like to see in a product to be able to help you accelerate that journey?
Yeah, it's really like looking into the crystal ball with the pace of change, right? For all of us. If I look at it from the perspective, like with, acknowledging the lot of unknowns, but what I believe that we would, or other data leaders could, wish they had done earlier, right, to prepare for what is coming. Couple things would stand out. Yeah, I would think that we all wish we had, treated observability and governance as integral from the start and not something added as afterthought. I believe that we will wish we had invested also more in interoperability, making sure systems, platforms, domains can actually work together instead of creating isolated stacks. And another big one is really taking metadata seriously. Yeah, not just having a catalog, but designing how it's captured, managed, and used, so it becomes an active layer, not passive documentation. And if I look kind of beyond these, let's say, architecture elements, we really need to focus on upskilling the data teams, getting them ready for what's coming, even though we only partially know what it is. The key is building the capability to adapt.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ondrej. Thank you so much for dialing in. I know it's late in the night, almost night for you. So thank you so much for dialing in. Really appreciate that. And Satish, thank you so much for joining us here. Thank you.
Thank you.